Hey everyone. Recently my niece invited me over to her new place, and she was so excited to show me her apartment. And she sat down and we had a little conversation about, I guess, social life. And she asked me, what was it like to party back in the days when you were younger? And I thought that was a kind of strange question because I thought, okay, well, what could possibly change? I mean, I thought all of the young people today did the same things we did. Head to the bar and line up, get dressed up, and have a good time. And I started thinking about this and start to explain to her about some of the house parties we had back in the day, and she was so surprised that we did these kinds of things. And I remember back in the day, when you could just have a party at someone's house, and it could get out of hand. It became a big story, especially when you're in high school, when you return to class on Monday. And you had the party, and it was loud, it was rowdy, but there was no footage of the party, right? Just the memories we have of them. There was no social media posts, no permanent record of the party taking place. Just a lot of us Gen Xers just remembering these parties. And you go back and ask your friends about the party, everyone would have a different story and kind of remember it differently, right? And the thing about it is, the parties that us Gen Xers had back in the 80s, it was not like the movies. The movies kind of showed them the house party a little bit more cleaner, a little more upscale as well. But the parties that I went to and I remember back in the 80s were a lot grungier, they were darker, they were definitely a lot cheaper, and sometimes a little bit awkward, right? I mean, it was usually held in a house that was like smaller than the number of people that were in there. We had cheap beer. If we didn't have cheap beer, then we would buy the cheapest liquor we could find and bring it to the party. Or maybe some of us would bring nothing to the party and hope no one notices. I remember going to parties where we just get a clean garbage can, and everyone would dump their liquor into the garbage can and then throw some punch in there and would mix it with a hockey stick, and people just drink all this take their plastic cups and scoop it out, and that was the punch for the night. I can't remember what it's called. Where I was from, I think they called it jungle juice. And usually the parties would take place when a parent would be out of town, or they'll have the parent out of town and someone's older sibling would be pretending to supervise the party. Now, the music, I remember, was usually louder than the speakers can handle, and probably a lot of these speakers were blown out blown out by the music. I mean, you'd hear everything from the heavy metal stuff, and all types of music would be played. And I remember like I said, the house being really usually really small, and just tons and tons of kids just all throughout the house, into the yard. And there would always be a little bit of nervous energy because you didn't know if the parents were going to just come home early or show up, or the cops were going to show up, and people would just scatter, and run out of the house and go in different directions. But these parties signify these parties from the 80s signify something. And I think these Gen X parties, what I think the lessons I can learn from them is that we had a lot of privacy. You know, when we had these parties, there were no cameras. You could be stupid, and people would just talk about it on Monday in class and then move on. You know, there's no risk of being recorded and having it stay on the internet forever. It was just very spontaneous. Nobody planned the party out for 3 weeks or send out an evite. It was just, hearing the word spread throughout school. Hey, Dave's having a party. Show up at this time on Saturday. And people would just show up in droves, right? And the word just kind of spread throughout the school. Sometimes out in your neighborhood, and you'll get people from the other high schools showing up at the party. And the thing about it is, I think those parties really allowed us to find out a lot about ourselves. We learned to develop social courage. Maybe, you were drumming up, enough courage to go ask that girl to dance. You had to have awkward conversations sometimes, right? But you got to develop these social skills and be comfortable in silence at times. Or you could just feel the sting of being rejected, right? You could do so many stupid things. I remember so many things like that. I remember when, you wouldn't even dare pass out from drinking because your friends would have the magic marker or some kind of lipstick, and they'll draw all over your face as you're passed out. And then you just wake up to a group of them just laughing at you, right? And I remember one of my friends woke up and he had half his mustache shaved off. Those are things, that we did. And at the time, it was just, people just kind of laughed about it and moved on. And maybe today, it would be seen differently. But I think those places, you just learn to also be present. You learn to be able to read the room and just be yourself for those few hours that you were there at the party. The parties weren't perfect. They, sometimes were reckless. Some of the stuff, the antics maybe went a little bit too far. But, it did bring back a lot of memories for me. And I think it was all good fun as long as people all made it home safe. But I wouldn't say that the parties were, a bunch of kids just doing stupid stuff. I think if you look a little bit deeper, I would say that it fostered a sense of community amongst us. There's also fostered a sense of freedom, and there was also a time when you can just be a teen without worrying about an audience, right? And I think today's teens are kind of, they don't have that luxury, right? Because we are able to be spontaneous, we were able to be awkward, and everything was just temporary. And now, you're always under surveillance all the time, right? Under the watch of someone's cell phone recording you, and that experience of as a Gen Xer partying in the 80s, it was that room just belonged to the people inside of it. Everything that happened in there stayed stayed within the confines of that room. And I don't think so much that we missed the parties, as per se. But I think what we do miss that how private the party was and how real the party was. And I think we're happy that our mistakes that we made at those parties, they disappeared by the morning. And maybe people talk about it on a Monday morning, but eventually it'll just fade away into memory. And I think it taught something about friendship as well, right? Because it was just showing up and just being together in a room together and all having fun. And for us Gen Xers, it was a time where you can screw up, make mistakes, and not have that mistake follow you for the rest of your life. And now today, for the kids today, every misstep is captured and recorded and used as content to entertain the world. And for me, I would never trade my time in the 80s at those parties for what the kids have to experience today. And it's not because our parties were better, but we got to do things in our own privacy. And like I said, when the party was over, it was over. So I'm curious to hear, I'd love to hear from you guys about the house parties you attended. What do you remember about the house parties, and what was the one party that you think about the most? Drop it in the comments, and I want to know. It'll be I'd love to share and hear from all you guys about these awesome parties that you experienced back in the day. So if you like this video and you like the content on this channel, please feel free to like, share, or subscribe, and feel free to check out my next video. Okay, I will talk to you next time. Bye for now.